Today's presentation will focus on a couple of things, but I'll introduce myself. I've been at Centurion for 8+ years now. I joined back in June of 2014. I'll say I've seen some tremendous growth in the company since then. But today's focus will give you an outlook. We'll look at the fundamentals of the multi-residential space here in Canada, what we see as the opportunities for investors going forward.
首先是 Matt 的话呢是加入了整球卷有差不多8年时间哈，然后他今天的话给大家来分享一下这公司的背景情况，包括他们这些投资逻辑在商业地产方面、多住宅出租公寓方面的一些案例分享。
In the next 2 slides I'll show you, just going to reiterate again I think the really powerful tailwinds we see in the multi-residential space here in Canada. We do see, I like to say it's a very boring fund, really protected investors very well, but also some exciting opportunities going forward.
下面的话他就来重点讲一下这个在加拿大多户型这个房地产投资领域的一些底层逻辑，包括一些投资机会。
You see on the screen, on the page, there's going to be 7 fundamentals. Really, I'm going to focus on the top 3. I believe those top 3 are really the strongest, most powerful drivers of the marketplace we're looking at right now. The first one is unaffordability. I know I was out in Vancouver earlier in the year, earlier in the month. Extreme unaffordability there. Toronto's not that far behind on the unaffordability scale. So simply meaning people can't afford to buy, they like to have a roof over their head, they're going to have to rent.
这里一共有7个主要的这个驱动因素，在这边加拿大的这个公寓市场。Matt 这边呢会主要是提到这个3个最重要的因素哈。他首先提到第一点就是可负担性，在整个大城市，包括多伦多，相信多伦多、温哥华都会存在这个问题。可负担性是一个非常严重的问题，也就是说，很多人的话已经是这边的房价高涨，已经是买不起这边的公寓了。
And on top of that, in an unaffordable market, we're seeing very strong immigration, very strong population growth. Most of that does come from immigration. I'll show you some slides on what we're seeing going forward from the federal government policy. Again, a very positive thing for the country, exceptionally positive thing for I will say landlords.
对，但是在这些大城市，大家又看到有大量的移民进来啊，这就是一个背后的驱动因素。待会儿的话，他会给一些数据给大家分享一下，让大家知道一下这个人口移民的增长。
And on top of all those 2 powerful drivers, we're seeing the supply just is not keeping up with demand. So again, putting a situation in place where people are forced to go into more and more rentals they can't afford to buy, and they're pushing up the price of rents across the board.
然后呢，现在同时需求又这么旺盛，但是呢，供应又跟不上啊。有这么多新的移民进来，有这么多人口，但是呢，供应跟不上。 所以呢，房价又这么高，又买不起，所以这就为什么带来这个租房的需求市场这么强烈。
In the next slide here, this gives you, I think, a great picture of Toronto. Well, you can see the slide on the left-hand side is income to house price, and you can see here, in red is Canada, and this is the G7 price to income ratio. And you see what that simply means. The prices are outstripping, income that's being made here in Canada, so making it increasingly unaffordable, kind of year after year. And it's been like that since early 2000s, so like 2005, 2006. It's really started to take off. That gives you, I think, a great picture of where we are on like the G7. A little bit more of a global picture is over there on the right-hand side. This is again, but more of a price to income ratio. Hong Kong always well ahead of everyone. Obviously, Australia is down there, but Vancouver is number 3 and Toronto is number 10. So you've seen 2 of the largest population centers in Canada having globally, by a global picture, extreme unaffordability, simply meaning a lot of people are again forced into the rental market.
这张图的话，给大家很好的展示了现在的可负担能力。包括左边这张是 G7， 7大工业发达国家，包括右边这张是全球的一个大城市的可负担能力。 左边大家可以看得到，从2005年起，红色的这条线就是加拿大啊，就是增长最快的房价，在整个这个 G7 的工业国家里面啊，大家可以看得到增长的最快。右边这张图的话，就是全世界这个10大最应该说是最不可负担的能力的这些市场。当然，我们这个中国香港是第1位的排名哈，但是呢，温哥华和多伦多大家也可以看到。 这个是排名是第3和第10哈，大家刚才提到第3和第10最不可负担能力的 这个城市。
And here just gives you a bit of perspective in Ontario and where also for the GTA. A lot of people want to own a home. They want to get into the ownership market, but I think there's realization that's increasingly untenable. A lot of people are going to be forced to rent and forced to rent for a lot longer than they ever thought they would.
这个图的话是让大家看到，特别是在安省，在 GTA 可以看到这个像钥匙的形状，可以看得到，差不多在 GTA 的话要花24年时间才足够付，20% down payment， 要花14年时间，平均是花14年要凑够20%的首付，但是在 GTA 要花24年时间哈，这就是大家可以看得到这边的可负担能力就是非常差。
So this pessimism that you're seeing from younger buyers, where I think they're being realistic that it'd be tougher and tougher for them to get into home ownership, you can just see the unaffordability. Or if you look at the middle box there, how long it's going to take for someone based off of median income in Toronto, in Canada, to actually be able to afford a down payment. You can look back in 1976, the year I was actually born, it was 5 years. Huge difference to today, obviously 24 years. Talking about almost 20 years longer to actually get that down payment. That's a long time for people to actually be able to afford to save up. You got to live somewhere, you're paying rent, you're paying all these other expenses. You actually have to be able to get into, build up that down payment. So it is exceptionally tough for them to make that jump into home ownership, which again means they're in the rental market for a lot longer, which means, more people coming into an undersupplied marketplace.
好像我刚才已经翻译的超前了哈，他还是讲了这张图，就是在1976年的话，5年时间就可以凑够首付去买房，但现在在 GTA 是24年，这就是从另外一个侧面讲，就是说，只能逼着你去租房啊，租房的市场的需求很强烈哈。
We talk about demand. I think these will give you some great ideas of where Canada stands. One, you can see back from 2016 to 2021, we've had by far the largest population growth in the G7. By far. If you look at the numbers for Western Europe, I think it's in the ones, maybe low twos. If you look at the U.S., I think it's in the low ones as well. So by and large, we are greatly outgrowing population-wise the other countries in the G7. And again, a lot of that comes from immigration. And you can see the middle chart there. Every year this is being increased. So every year we're going to have a record amount of immigration coming into Canada, which again fundamentally means a lot more people coming to Canada that need somewhere to live. In a lot of cases, they can't necessarily afford to jump into the market. They need to rent. There's going to be renters. So think about it this way. You want to be in a marketplace where you have consistent growing demand year after year after year. That's fundamentally a great spot to be as an investor.
首先谈到了这个加拿大的人口增长，在 G7 里面的话，加拿大人口增长，从2016年到2021年的话，达到5.2%。像英国这种老牌的国家的话，只有可能2%。在美国的话，现在人口增长其实是只有1%，就没有人口增长是很缓慢的。啊，对加拿大来讲的话呢，就是主要就是因为移民的进入嘛。第二个方面的话，就是这个移民的数字的话，可以看得出来，每一年的数都在增加。你看，我记得原来才一年只有20多万、30多万，现在都已经40多万的这个目标要求。所以人口增长这么多，你这个住房又跟不上，所以其实大家可以从底层逻辑来想的话，其实就是机会，是这个机会的时间还是蛮长的哈。
And just to touch on the last box there, obviously we have a lot of foreign students coming to Canada, with 450,000 in 2021. I think that, again, that's a number that I would not expect to decrease. If anything, it's going to increase. But a lot of students come to Canada, get their education, and they want to stay here. They get paying jobs, but again, they're also forced into the rental market. So again, another avenue of people who come to Canada, but also increasing the demand for the multi-residential, for the rental space.
最后一点就是国际留学生的这个每一年进入加拿大嘛，现在差不多在2021年的话，它就有45万的留学生会过来。留学生再加上这个新移民，需求的话就将近有100万的人口增长。大家也知道这个在加拿大的话，应该从明年1月这个题外话了，明年1月1号开始外国人不允许买房，那可能这部分的话需求的话更多的话还是要租房哈，这个需求的话就是比原来更大。你想想加拿大才这么点人口，一年增加100万人口。就相当于增加了一个中等规模的城市哈。
And I like this slide. I mean, it gives you a great example of the type of areas we're looking at. This is obviously in BC, it's in the lower mainland, but it really applies to what we see or what we're doing here in Ontario as well, and really across the country. I think this gives us a great example. You can see we want to be where a couple of things. One, population is growing, where people actually want to live, and it has the amenities that people are looking for, like transit, shopping, entertainment, and access to, say, highways as well, and obviously schools.
这个呢是我们 BC 省的一张这个介绍，可能大家不是很熟悉哈。我们其实这个基本上都是在大温哥华地区，包括维多利亚、Kelowna 这个3个主要的这些区域，大家可以看到这个租金的上涨是非常快的。然后呢，大家现在主要人口聚集或者说人口迁移的地方，都是沿着这个交通啊，包括配套设施啊这个方向来扩张的。
And we see something similar like this, particularly in transit in areas in the Toronto and the GTA where you want to be, say, near a GO station, you want to be near a TTC line, similar situation. But I really like this example of the 2 bedrooms. One, because a lot of people are going to start families. They're going to do it when they're younger, when they can't afford to buy. And you can see there's a lack of supply on the 2-bedroom space. And you can see the type of demand pushing up the rents in the 2-bedroom space. This is an example of, obviously, Burnaby, Kelowna, and Victoria. But you see something similar here in the GTA. The demand for 2 bedrooms, because people starting their lives. They're not waiting for home ownership. They're having to do so in a rental, is really pushing up the rents in a rather more limited, supply situation on the 2-bedroom side.
他这边举这个例子，其实跟这个大多地区，我相信也应该也类似。就是第一个要交通方便的地方，第二个他特别提到的2房的一个公寓的需求，这个针对小家庭的需求特别旺盛。因为越来越贵，买不起，所以对2房公寓的需求越来越大。这个出租市场呢也是非常的好的。
But I'll just say this is a great example of what we're seeing in the lower mainland BC. I reiterate, it's something very similar. You'll be seeing what's happening in the GTA area as well. So I think this is a great example of 2 large population centers that are seeing tremendous population growth and the need for more multi-residential rental space in those areas.
对，这个我相信就是跟大多是类似，多伦多和温哥华这边就是越来越多的对这个公寓市场2房公寓市场的需求的旺盛哈。
And this is a great picture of geographically where we're located. I'll say right now we're at 144 buildings. We had a new acquisition just earlier in August, a portfolio acquisition earlier in August. But I'll break down our geographic approach this way. In BC and Ontario, we're in the primary and secondary cities. The rest of Canada, we're only in the primary cities. So we look at it, we want to be in the larger population centers, meaning we want to be where people want to live, where immigration, population growth is really going to be focused on.
这张图呢，就是他们现在沈秋瑾的公司的一个 volume 的介绍。当然，现在的数字已经是有进一步的更新，已经到140多栋的物业。他们主要集中的地方都是在人口密集的城市，像多伦多、这个温哥华这个区域。那其他城市的话呢，一定也是挑核心区域、人口就业集中的地方哈。
And we're very specific where we look in like a Vancouver, but more. I'll give Toronto an example. We're not downtown. We're not downtown Toronto. Our buildings would be out in East York. They'd be out in Scarborough. They'd be out in Mississauga or out in Etobicoke. We're not downtown, and that's very purposeful. We want to have housing that's relatively affordable for a far broader tenant base. So we want to give that opportunity for. I'll give you an example right now. Our average rent is $1,416. That's a 1-bedroom in London, up to includes a 1-bedroom in the Toronto area. Toronto area is going to be higher, but our 1-bedrooms in the Toronto area would start at like $1,700, $1,750. Again, real relative affordability for a lot of people. And that's very purposeful. We want to have as big a potential tenant base as possible. You want to have as much possible demand for your product, for your rentals as you can get.
他刚才讲了公司的这个投资策略，他们现在收购的物业，持有这些物业呢，不是集中在像市中心，包括温哥华，他们也是，其实不在市中心，他们不拥有，都是在外围。多伦多大家更熟悉哈，他刚才提到的都在士嘉堡啊、密西萨嘎周围的城市，原因是因为那边有更多的能负担得起租金的这些的租客。刚才提到的数字是1房的租金可能在1416左右。在 downtown 多伦多可能是不是现在到1700、1800了？那他们的策略是在外围 能够更多能找得到这样能负担得起租金的这些租客，这是他们的策略。
I'll just touch on a few other things. You'll see there's like the green little dots in there. That's where our student housing are. Right now, we currently have 14 buildings. Predominantly, we have 11 in London, Waterloo area, and we have one in Calgary, one in Burnaby, and one in Simon Fraser, a suburb of Vancouver. We like student housing, but right now it's about 5% of our portfolio. It's a nice little diversifier, but really the bigger opportunity is on the multi-residential side.
他刚才强调了，就是绿色的地方呢，是指他们收购的这些学生出租公寓，在几个大城市。刚才提到，一开始原来有11栋，现在有14栋，在滑铁卢那边原来集中在，现在呢也有在，包括有 Montreal，right， 然后还有在 Burnaby 啊 Calgary， 这些都是离大学近的地方，学生公寓。像 Burnaby 他提到是在我们那边的 SFU 西门菲沙大学，他们也有这个投资的学生出租公寓。
And the really dark blue is medical offices. So right now we have, 12 medical offices in the portfolio. We just made a new acquisition on that side. That represents 2.5% of our portfolio. Again, a nice little diversifier, not our focus, but it was a very opportunistic, well-priced offer, potential deal for us that we were able to close on. Has a lot of the fundamentals that we see in the multi-residential space. Just people need doctors, need healthcare, and I think we've all seen the headlines. That's something we may be lacking a little bit of here in the Ontario region. So tremendous demand for these type of assets.
然后他提到这些深色的点，应该是那个黑色的点，他们是拥有这个办公楼的出租，都是一些比较像专业的，是像医疗方面呐，这些专业人士的一些办公楼的出租哈，这个占到他们整个 portfolio 差不多2.5%。刚才说到的学生公寓，他提到是占到整个 portfolio 5%左右。
You see, we have 6 properties in the U.S. That's not our focus right now. Our focus really is building up our portfolio here in Canada. We see the U.S. as a great opportunity, very large, very liquid market. So when we don't see any opportunities available in Canada or opportunities not at the price we're willing to pay, we can always do that pivot. But we see some exciting opportunities over the next 3 to 5 years in Canada, so that will be our focus.
在美国的话，他们只是拥有6个城市的这个地点，他们拥有这个投资公寓，因为这个不是他们的重点，主要的重点还是在加拿大。那美国的话，无非就是说是这个机会特别好的投资机会，他们才会考虑。现在重点还是在接下来3-5年，它应该还是集中在加拿大的这个出租公寓的投资。
And this is a great example of a more recent acquisition that we made in the GTA area. This was a mini portfolio made up of 3 buildings, 1 in Ottawa, 2 in the Oshawa area. And these are the type of buildings I mentioned that we've been able to get in the Toronto area. These are old buildings put up in the 70s, maybe early 80s. Fantastic builds. They're not fancy, they're not condo-like in any way. But the great thing about these is the size of those units. As we all know, everything's in condo land, everything's getting built smaller and smaller. New builds are getting smaller and smaller. These have those old, larger units that has really opened up a tremendous demand and tremendous market opportunity for us.
这边现在 Matt 给了一个这个例子，举个例子，就是在 Oshawa 和Ottawa， 他们收购了一个 portfolio 小的一个 mini 的 portfolio， 就是3栋楼。这3栋楼的话呢，就是是70、80年代的。不是很新的楼，但是呢，他们很喜欢这样的这个小的物业收购，原因是因为它的尺寸都比较大，然后在市场上的需求呢都很旺盛，不像现在新建的楼越建越小，尺寸越来越小哈，这是他们比较喜欢的这种公寓投资类别。
Honestly, we love these buildings. This one, the price point is obviously lower than some of our newer acquisitions that have higher level of amenities. So it offers real relative affordability for a lot more people, meaning a lot more potential tenants could come into these buildings. But on top of that, it's the size of these units. Like these 1-bedrooms would be 700 square feet. I'll give you an example why that's important. I did a tour of one of our buildings in East York, but very similar to these. Being that size, you can actually have a family of 4 in those units, not just say a young couple or an individual. Simply meaning like a young family can say, immigrate to Canada and find a place to live that is relatively very affordable for them. And I saw this. It was like mom and dad sleeping in the bedroom, and then the 2 little children have their beds kind of set up in the den. But at 700 square feet, you can make that work for a few years. So it gives a lot of potential tenants access into the multi-residential space at a price that's affordable for them. It also really obviously works for us and our investors. So a tremendous opportunity with these type of buildings. We love getting these into portfolio.
他提到了为什么考虑这样的楼哈，刚才提到就是第一个尺寸很大，楼比较旧一点，所以呢价钱一方面也不是很高，虽然没有新楼的一些很 fancy 的这些公共设施，但是反过来讲，那个价钱啊、管理费啊各方面可能是不是更低一点？最重要的话，它尺寸大嘛，刚才举例就是一房的公寓就有700尺，这样呢就很适合这个小家庭一开始来居住，可能就已经可以满足好几年的需求，不光只是说单身的一对夫妻，包括有小孩都可以住好几年，所以对市场上对这样的一个大一点的这种公寓的需求其实是非常非常强烈的，所以其实也是跟投资的一些信息哈，就是你们以后大家以后投资的时候，什么样的是市场上现在最需要的，不一定是最新最 fancy 这些楼，但是可能这种是更好的选择哈。
There's a limited supply of these type of older buildings. I mean, there's a bit of a boom in multi-residential building in kind of, we'll say the 70s, that petered out to focus on condos and single-family homes. But where we can, we get these. And the next slide will show you a great example of the new builds that we're bringing into the portfolio. It's very exciting, and we see a lot of great opportunities in these type of acquisitions.
好，刚才举了这样的一个例子呢，待会儿他再举一个他们收购新楼的一个案例，就是解释一下，为什么像这个地段他们更喜欢是旧的楼，但是另外一个 acquisition 的话，他们又是收购新的楼哈，给大家做一个案例的分析。
And this is it. This is the largest acquisition Centurion's ever made, and it's the largest one in the history of Quebec. This was 30 buildings, new builds, average age of 2 years. Again, it's where we want to be. It's in the Montreal area, but out in the North Shore, out on the South Shore, again with the focus on the suburbs of a large major population center.
这个是他们最新的收购的一个叫一个打包的物业，一共有30栋楼。这是他刚才提到在魁北克历史上最大的一个收购啊，一共有30栋楼，楼都很新，这可能差不多都只有2年新左右，而且这个地段的话都是在这个城市的这个周边哈 ，suburban 这些地方。
So these are more focused on, I would say, young professionals, people just coming out of the university, they get good jobs, they can't afford to buy, and really everything up to people, retirees who don't want the headache of home ownership anymore, and a lot of people just in between. So these are great assets for us. But again, it's a similar situation. Again, the suburbs, they offer real relative affordability. If you're going to try and rent the same thing in downtown Montreal, you're probably paying 5, 6, 7, maybe 700 more in rent. So you're out in the suburbs, you get something that's very attractive, the amenities you're looking for, but again, the affordability factor plays into this. Again, we're not downtown charging downtown prices in these major cities.
这也是符合他们一贯的这样投资的理念。第一个不是投在这个市中心最贵的地方，投在外面。一方面呢是，其实就像新的开发区一样，就吸引更多的这个年轻的家庭、专业人士。另外一方面可能就是退休downsize 这些家庭啊，所以呢，他们的核心理念还是就是说不投这个当上最贵的地方，而投外面有更多需求、更能负担得起的这些地方。
Just go over this slide here. This is since inception of the REIT, and as you look in 2009, that's from August 31st. So basically, look at that as a 4-month return. But our target return for investors is 7 to 12%, and that's made up of income plus appreciation. So you can see for every other year, besides again that abbreviated 2009, we were within that target or above that target.
这个是他们整个这个做的基金的这个业绩啊，给大家分享一下。从2009年开始，因为当时只有4个月嘛，那他们的目标是这个每一年的年化业绩在7%到12%之间，所以你可以看到每一年的这个业绩的表现，基本上全部是在这个范围之内，很多年份还超过这个业绩哈，还超过这个他们的目标12%的业绩。
I'll just touch on 2017 to 2019. Those are very high returns for us. And the focus of those 2017 to 2019 years was really the demand for housing. I mean, the demand for rentals. Basically the fundamentals we were looking at right now: lack of supply, unaffordability, just population growth, demand coming into play. Was derailed obviously by COVID. That put a put a damper on some on the plans, but we're looking at right now. I'll say we're looking at similar fundamentals. But I will say there's no, obviously, zero. Our target return is 7 to 12, and what we've seen in the past is no guarantee of future returns. But I say that we have some powerful fundamentals that are picking up again in Canada that make it will look for us very exciting.
他刚才提到了，2017年和2019年的业绩特别好，我相信2018年也是，主要原因也是因为那个时候的话，我相信整个多伦多跟温哥华市场一样，就是公寓啊、房产的这个价格走得比较快，所以他们的投资回报其实是从一方面租金收益，另外一方面从这个物业的增值过来的。所以当然房市好的话，它可能物业的增值也快，但是呢，他们的底层逻辑没有变啊，还是说供需矛盾解决不了，还是集中在这个大家这些能负担得起的地方，能够找到更多租客的地方。
I'll just touch on the returns year to date. That's as of the end of Q2. Right now, we're at 10.26% return for investors. What's really been driving that is appreciation of properties, and what's driving that is the increase in rental income that we're seeing in the portfolio. So again, this may sound a little bit strange, but we like the turnover we're seeing. We're seeing a pickup in turnover in our units. The long-term average for turnover in Canada is 28-25%. We're not there yet, but we're seeing a nice pickup, which simply means in Ontario and other provinces like BC, on turnover, you can raise rents to market, which is where we can get those sometimes very significant lifts in rents out of that unit. So that's where you get the push higher in the returns for investors. That's what we've seeing this year, I think, as we fully come out of, I'll say, the COVID little mini era.
他刚刚提到，就是今年已经上半年的业绩其实已经达到了10.26啊，他们的业绩已经到了10.26。那业绩提高的原因，一方面是因为租金的提高，因为换租客之后，每一次就可以提升租金嘛，然后包括你做过装修之后，那你这个物业出租也可以提高这个租金收益，所以呢，他们还是按照这个方向是在走的。
On top of obviously the rental income, there's another very important driver of returns for investors. One is how you operate the buildings. It's the hands-on management that Centurion has. We do all the operations ourselves in our buildings. All of our buildings have superintendents living in them, and that's very important. You want to make sure the buildings are as efficient as possible. Make the upgrades, in appliances, in light bulbs, whatever it is to reduce the costs of running the building, but also at the same time make the building a very pleasant, attractive place for tenants as well. So effectively, you can find ways to decrease the costs of running these buildings, which I'll stress we take exceptionally seriously. Operations team is probably the second largest team at Centurion after accounting. So we want to make sure it's, again, very efficient, but at the same time appealing to tenants. So you get that, drive occupancy rates as high as you can.
他给大家介绍，他一个很重要的他们的策略就是他们的营运，这个出租公寓的营运是他们自己的团队，所以呢，一方面呢是维护保养比较好，另外一方面呢使这个公寓呢这个状况都保持得非常优良，这样的话也是更容易吸引好的租客，所以呢成本的降低，然后呢又可以达到比较好的这个租掉比较好的价格，这就是他们一个成功的秘密。他们的营运团队可能是仅次于他们accounting 部门的话是第二大的这个在公司里的团队。
I think just slowing this slide because there's a bull market in the public markets, but now I'll say in times of uncertainty, maybe to put it mildly. But the great thing about the Centurion Apartment REIT investing in private assets is Centurion at the top, you can see its correlation to itself is obviously 1. But then the correlation to major iShares ETFs that you could buy on the TSX or S&P is very low or negative, which means buying a hard asset such as the Centurion Apartment REIT gives you true diversification for your investments.
这个表格分享可能就是大家如果是投资在公开市场的话，可能会更有感触。就是说，这是跟这些公开市场的投资的，不管是指数基金也好，这个相关性，因为本身这个是在非公开，沈秋俊的话，这个 REIT 是在非公开市场上发行啊，不受公开市场的影响，所以大家可以看到这个跟公开市场的关联性非常的这个低哈。所以说，公开市场的波动不会影响到我们非公开市场的这些投资，这个也是可以给大家一个建议或方向。当你在投资的时候，除了公开市场之外，非公开市场的这个投资也是可以在你的投资的组合里面的一部分。
Just give you a quick summary. The focus of Centurion is really to protect investors' capital, provide income, and also give you some capital appreciation on top of that. And our focus is, again, buying multi-residential in the middle income, lower middle income space in the rental market. And that's, again, very purposeful. We want to buy the housing that has as broad as you can look at it, a broad potential tenant base, which simply means a lot more demand for the units that you hold, a lot more demand for you as investors for the type of investment that you're holding with Centurion, which as an investor is probably one of the most attractive things you can see.
这边就分享他们这个总结一下他们的投资策略。他们投资的主要是投资在能够产生租金收益的现金流的，又能够带来这个资产增值的这些物业，特别是这个出租公寓和学生宿舍。他们的目标群体呢是在这个中产阶级，可能收入的话是在中产阶级的这个阶层，因为这样的话有更多的这个潜在的这个租客用户需求这是他们的这个投资策略。
And I'll tell you a couple of other things. One, performance-wise, is we have I'll say, attractive tax-efficient income that is paid out monthly for investors. So it's a nice little bonus if you need the monthly income, or if you don't, you can reinvest your distributions at a discount, at a 2% discount to the NAV. So it adds a little bit of extra return for investors if that's what you're looking for.
从投资收益的话，你可以选择每个月可以从他们这边拿取这个租金的收益，你也可以选择把这个租金收益的话呢，可以重新再投资到它这个基金里面给你更多的一个选择。从税务上来讲的话呢，也有这方面的这个税务上的优惠。
And one other thing I think is exceptionally important for investors is the oversight that the company has on its investments. And I'll say Centurion easily second to none in the private space here in Canada. One, we have a majority board of independent trustees, so they review everything we do quarterly. They review all the acquisitions, and when we sell a building, which is very rare, they review that sale, disposition of an asset as well. When we appraise our portfolio, which we do on a quarterly basis, we use a third-party appraiser to do so, to work with our finance team. And then there's multiple layers of oversight on that valuation process. Then on an annual basis, we have KPMG come in and do an audit. They also audit, obviously, us, but they also audit our third-party appraiser. So I would say that, again, the oversight in this portfolio at Centurion really is second to none.
Centurion 这个公司的话，它的跟别的公司不一样的地方，就是它有很多独立的这些董事，能够来监管、来看每个收购的案件。另外一方面呢，从他们评估角度来讲，每个季度都会跟物业进行做这样的评估，然后每一年呢就会有 KPMG 的这个第三方独立的这个审计会计事务所来做这样的审计，能保障这个投资人的利益。
I'll leave it at this. I mean, the Centurion Apartment REIT's done a fantastic job of providing attractive returns for investors, avoiding the volatility, the noise that you get from public markets, long, stable, steady returns. Again, can't guarantee the future, but I think we're in a very attractive position going forward for the next foreseeable future with such powerful fundamentals behind us in the multi-residential space.
那最后总结一下就是。Centurion 这个公司的话，可以跟您提供很稳定的这个租金收益。另外的话呢，他们是做长期的长线投资，而且呢又是避免了公开市场的这些波动性这是他们这个，而且在未来的若干年之后，他们也非常看好这个多住宅的这个出租公寓市场，所以这是他们的这个远景和目标